Alright everyone, give me a minute to get this pulled up on my phone so I can see the chat. There we go. Although I'm pretty sure I'm the only one watching at this point. Oh hey, that was fast. As you all may know, today is the 106th, I believe, anniversary for the sinking of His Majesty's hospital ship Britannic. Let's make sure that that's not overpowering what I'm saying. I'll turn that down a little. And the Britannic was the main sister ship for the RMS Titanic. And we'll go ahead and look at what... We'll go ahead and quickly do a tour of the ship. That way you all can see what the ship looked like. And we're not going to spend too much time on the RMS, because that's just not much time. There's not much reason to spend. Oh, how do I turn this off? Wait. Options. I forgot how to do R T. T is how you do that. Just to disable the little info cards, because I'm not really going to be going over them. So, the HMHS Britannic started construction, I believe, before the Titanic was even off the slipway, or maybe just shortly after. It was the third and final sister ship of the Olympic class and was intended to be the best of the ships. Now, a lot of the changes you see here from the Titanic were not actually intended on the original design. On the original design, the ship would much closer resemble its sister ships. However, as you definitely know, on April 14th, the Titanic sank, which kind of put a damper on a lot of the plans regarding the Britannic, because a lot of changes needed to be made. Chief among those being adding more lifeboats. And these Welland davits were not actually intended to be on the ship either. What was supposed to happen, it will actually hop over, we'll start on the passenger ship exterior. Just give us some time for that. And you'll notice that those Welland davits from earlier are gone now. And that there are more gantry davits. Gantry davits are the big crane ones, by the way. The Welland davits are the smaller ones that have the arms. Well, you like the kind on Titanic. So White Star Line made a bunch of changes to the ship. The first and foremost, they raised bulkheads up as high as B deck. Second, they added way more lifeboats and introduced a new way to store them in order to keep the promenades clean and safe. And that includes, and basically what they did is they came up with a whole new way of storing the lifeboats. And what they did is they came up with gantry davits. Giant motorized crane arm things that were made in order to, and these giant cranes were made in order to pick lifeboats up off the deck and swing them out and lower them. And at most, I believe, one gantry davit at most, the most on the ship it could carry is, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 6 at most. 6 lifeboats in one area is pretty good. It allowed them to store a ton of lifeboats on the ship, more than were actually necessary. Actually, wait, no. Yeah, I believe that's also the 6 count. So, it allowed them to store a bunch of lifeboats right next to each other, right on the boat deck, and it allowed them to keep these larger areas, like the middle of this like the first class promenade here, open and empty. They didn't have to, look at it. They didn't have to keep too much of an eye on it. And, well, hold on, let me just think for a moment. They didn't have to crowd the decks with a ton of lifeboats like, say, happened on the Lusitania and the Olympic. Now, this had a few interesting changes throughout the ship. Probably the biggest being, and I'm making my way back there now, towards the stern where the big, gantry arms were stored. And that'll be right there. You can see these big support pillars stuck here, and these actually go right underneath the gantry davits, so that basically allows them to sit on the deck without causing it to collapse. You have a ton of public rooms, a ton of really nice stuff on the promenade deck, but I am all over the place. I'm sorry. I forgot that today was the anniversary, and so I am just now getting on and having to go through all this, so. The next major changes and after making all these safety changes, because the safety changes were easily the most important ones, they also decided that it was probably for the best to make a bunch of hello, Adam, to make less safety changes and stylistic changes, because now the Britannic was going to take much longer to build. And that included, and I'll go over all of them now, the biggest change that they made was to take the well deck, the after well deck, cover it up, and raise the third class smoking room to be on B deck. This had a bunch of side effects. Like, now they also had to... Oh, it's sunsetting. This game is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. They had to now raise the bridge deck all the way up to be level with the boat deck, and the gantry davits were now on level with A deck. Heading forward in the ship, there were many more changes on the interior that we'll go over. They also gave, you may have noticed it back when we were under this area here. They also gave second class a gym, which took them long enough, really. Yeah, just a pretty shot there. And the lights should come on fairly soon. And heading forward in the ship, they also added a children's playroom on the starboard side of the funnel, and actually shrunk down, although we'll see that later, the reading and writing room, to make way for cabins. They also, don't believe that any changes were made to the bridge, but heading down below, they also raised up the cargo hatches and basically completely changed around the third class quarters to include more cabins, and also to give them this nice opening out onto the forward well deck. And you may notice that the doors here, that should be here, are missing. That would normally go down to the third class open space. And you can see just how much these... Oh yeah, there's another change that they made. There is a change that they made to the bridge, and that was more of a quality of life thing for the officers, but they changed it so that... Hello, Felipe. They changed it so that there was a compass tower on top of the bridge, and that it had a nice bulwark or railing that went around. And I believe the lights just came on. So really quickly, I am going to jump over the side of the ship to give you a view and a feeling for how this ship looks at night. And you may notice that it is a lot different from the Titanic, because you can see a lot of the changes I've been going over from the water. They also added 2 radial davits up to the front of the ship, which you can see pretty beautifully here. And there it is. Believe we're going to start getting that, like, Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights thing soon. You can see. Now, here's when things start to get a little rough, because the Britannic never actually finished construction. Well, okay. It did. Hello, the First Order. Um, the Britannic did complete construction. However, before it could complete construction, well, okay, I guess I should wait to talk about that. Quickly, we'll just hop back on board the ship. But just keep that in mind, that the Britannic was not completed in its intended passenger role. So now we'll go over the changes that were made to the interior, and this is going to take forever to load, by the way, because it is a very big thing. And we're not going to go over the cabins too much, but we are going to go over the important stuff, which is largely the grand staircase. Oh my, I've been live for 10 minutes. Yeah, this is going to take a while, guys. I'm sorry. I can't do too much about this. Here we go. So, this is where things get interesting. And yeah, you can see just that it lags just from me looking around. There are a few changes you're going to notice, like, right off the bat. The first one is the tiling. Hello, fun roller coaster 606. The tiling has been changed so that it's a green-blue color, which is actually really pretty, and my opinion is actually better than the original. And here we can actually see into the children's playroom. It's got these like pictures of myths on the wall, of fairy tales, although most of these I've never actually heard of. Yeah. And sadly most of them are blocked by... There are also some rhymes, including Jack and Jill. And the next big thing you're probably going to notice, the second thing, is the pipe organ that's been put directly into the grand staircase, although we will come back to this. But believe it or not, it actually still exists, and we'll get to that later. The next big thing is that the elevators now reach all the way up to A deck. On the Titanic, they only reached as high up as B deck, or as... no. Now, the elevators reach all the way up to boat deck. On the Olympic and Titanic, they only reached as high as A deck, and we'll see that soon. So, coming back to the pipe organ, it does still exist, and that's because it was never installed on the Britannic, and we'll get to why in a minute. It's basically just going to be a crash course on the history of the Britannic, done in live stream format. So we now have the A deck elevators, and heading down and looking through, we can see where now normally this wall would almost border the reading and writing room, but the reading and writing room has been pushed back and now allows for these paneled cabins here. The next big thing, let's see. Next big change is a little bit further down in the ship on B deck. There is now an enquiry office on B deck. And here you have these telephone booths that allow you to make phone calls and stuff. If we head, and here's what one of those would have looked like. So here you can make phone calls from the ship. And if we squeeze our way through those doors... Oh, we can't get in. But that door would lead to the purser's office. Oh no. There we go. To the enquiry office. Now, we can't actually go further down to the ship, but there are a few changes I can point out from... We actually can. So there's the purser's office on C deck, as opposed to the enquiry office up a deck. And here we have just some regular stuff for the job, some nice postcards laid out on the table. This area isn't actually that much different, aside from this little room here, which has this lovely glass. Further into the ship, we have a bunch of, like, chairs and stuff here. It's all fairly nice. But, if we go over here, I can actually point out another difference. If you look all the way down to B deck, you can see that the flooring is not the same flooring you would find on the Olympic or Titanic when you talk about the reception room. And that is because... And the reason you can't find any of that stuff is because or you can't go... The reason you can... I don't know why they made that change, probably just another stylistic choice, like the way they changed the grand staircase and stuff, but it is an interesting difference. Now, the next area we're going to check out, where there's a big change, and this is really the last area we're going to check out, is the first-class pool, because on the Titanic, you may know that the first-class pool wasn't the most luxurious looking. It was mostly there for utilitarian purposes. So first of all, we're going to check out this. Lovely, the end of the grand staircase here. And now this entire room's been paneled. However, if we head over here, you'll notice the pool has changed a lot, and I'll try to quickly run through these changes. The first big change is that there's been a lot of decoration happening. There's now marble tiling on the wall. There are now really nice lights, and everything's neatly paneled and done. On the Titanic, it was just kind of barren. Like, the pool was not a very pretty room, all things considered. Another change you'll notice is that there should be, if I were to go all the way over here, roughly where this wall is, that wall should be pushed back a little bit, and there should be a walkway on this side of the pool. Now that was changed in order to make way for a double hull that goes all the way up to F deck, and that's why these lights get to be here. So now there's also... So that's another safety change that they made, is they added a double hull to the ship. Now, as I mentioned previously, the Britannic never completed construction as a passenger ship, because construction continued well into 1913 when the ship was launched, and it kept going into 1914. And in 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was riding his car on a presidential parade through a city in southern Austria-Hungary, and Franz Ferdinand was on the throne. So a bunch of assassins, that story is completely insane on its own, but all you need to know is that a bunch of assassins went up and killed him. And this started the First World War, and this led to Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia, which led to the First World War. So, and Great Britain was involved in the First World War. It was a key player. So the ship didn't really have much of a chance to complete construction because it was required for the war effort. And that, as such, it was turned into a hospital ship, and we're going to take a look at that now. You kind of saw it towards the beginning and in the thumbnail. So this is how the Britannic was actually completed in 1914, 1915. And here it is. The funnels are painted a yellow color. Funnels are painted a nice, lovely yellow color in order to present that it's a hospital ship, and there are a bunch of other changes. Now, the Britannic's construction wasn't fully completed by the time the ship was required for usage, so they didn't have all the gantry davits in, such as this one right here. If you recall from earlier in the stream, there was a gantry davit right here. You'll also know, and to make up for this lack of lifeboats, for the inability to store these lifeboats, they cluttered the deck. They went ahead and cluttered the Royal Navy cluttered the decks, adding a ton of lifeboats, 6 davits on each side, 24 lifeboats total, counting the collapsibles. Now, it wasn't just that starboard davit that got lost, we'll say. The other one, you'll see it when we get to the stern, was at the back here. The last 2 lifeboats, and they were not able to get that. Hello, Henry Stickmin. And you'll also... So yeah, the gantry davits are... There are 3 sets of gantry davits missing, which is a pretty monumental number of lifeboats. On top of that, the ship has been refit to store many... to house more people, and so it just requires more lifeboats overall. Now, the last major... Not really the last major change, but one of the major changes made to the Britannic was a morgue. You know, the ship is operating as a hospital. Sometimes people die, and you gotta have somewhere to store that, to store the bodies. That isn't just, you know, dumping them in the sea, because that's kind of rude and disrespectful. So they added a morgue to the back of the ship. There was also other changes were made that, such as, there were stairs added to the stern to provide easier access. The gantry davits were also painted an orange color, and the last major change we'll get to in a moment. There was also a lot more stuff painted a more orangey color. I don't really know why that was a change made, but it was. I don't really know. Yeah, again, I don't really know why, but there were. You can see that there's a flag. The masts were also painted that same yellow color. The bridge hasn't really made too many changes. Oh, actually, there is one that's actually really interesting. There is interesting stuff. The railing was actually kind of shrunk down, and I just noticed that. On the lower decks, again, new paint and stuff like that. Not really much difference, so I'm going to go ahead and... Oh yeah, there's also that, G618, that was the ship's service number. I think that's what you call it. Basically, it was the number that the Royal Navy gave to the ship to identify it. Now, jumping over the side of the ship, another really major change has been made, and I guarantee you all see it, but I'll go ahead and say what it is, just for those who are new here. There were, added to the ship, the hull was painted white, and there was a green band painted all along the side with broken up by 3 red crosses. And as the sun sets here, you'll get to see what those look like at night. And you'll notice that there are 2 crosses that are kind of breaking the lighting engine, that are up along the, that are posted along the side of the ship. And you'll notice that they glow at night, because for the rules of warfare to apply to a hospital ship, it appears that that lifeboat is making its way out. Because of how the rules of warfare apply, the ship must be identifiable at all times. And because if the ship is identified as a hospital ship correctly, it does not carry any weapons or anything of the sorts. It technically is not allowed to be sunk, and sinking a hospital ship is counted as a war crime, which we'll get to in a minute. That turns out really interesting for our ship here, and the lights are about to come on. You'll see what that looks like, because it is a very pretty ship, and you'll see the Aurora Borealis coming in. The ship was also given 2 motorboats, although those were on the passenger version. I just didn't see too much reason to note them. Let's just wait for the lights to come on, because it is a pretty sight. Oh. And it's taking its time. There it goes. You'll notice a green band of lights all along the side of the ship. I mean, it's also illegal to paint a ship to look like a hospital ship, even though it's not. So, have fun with that. And yeah, that is what the HMHS Britannic looked like both during the day and at night. So, oh, there goes the motorboat, sinking just a little bit. So now we have to hop over to the main menu, because something interesting happened to the ship. It was actually almost converted back into a passenger ship for a very brief moment in time. That didn't go through. Because they needed the ship again, and I believe this happened maybe earlier in 1916, but in 1916, the HMHS Britannic was sailing through the Kea Channel, and it was, let's see, it was starting at 8:09. And the ship was sat here. The ship was sailing along, doing its duty. The ship was not actually loaded with troops at this time. It just had crew members on board, and that totaled a little over 1,000 people. Which, now you have to remember, this ship has had many modifications to it from its sister ship. That gives it a little bit of an interesting, thing. It's a much safer ship than its sister. And the ship is sailing along through the Kea Channel. There's a crew change going on, so the watertight doors are left open at the moment. And the ship is identified as a hospital ship, so no one's going to try to sink it. Well, earlier, a U-boat actually went through this area and laid a bunch of mines. Now, before that, it was cleared by a minesweeper, so no one really knew that there were mines here at the moment. And you'll see the lifeboats all here. Well, this all led to a bit of an incident, as the ship was sailing along, just kind of doing its thing. And I'll go ahead and get on the bow for this. Because that's a pretty nice view of the ship. And it was sailing along, just doing its thing. And it took a while for this to happen. And it took a long time for this to happen. Now, everyone on the ship was either really late into their shift or getting ready for their shift. So no one was really ready for an evacuation or anything like that. But it was a Royal Navy group that was in charge of all this, so they were ready for the possibility, but not expecting anything to come of it. Okay, come on, this is taking quite some time. Should happen fairly soon. Does give you your time to get your bearings. Yeah, so do the little, I'm the king of the world. So this is the view. An interesting little view. It's roughly 8:10, probably, a little bit later than that. Oh, here it goes. Just at this moment, the Britannic struck a sea mine in the Kea Channel. Now, this was not laid with the intention of hitting the Britannic, but it did. So, the ship has now struck a mine and is doomed. Just about instantly, they flipped the switch to close the watertight doors. However, there was a bit of an issue with that. You see, a few things. Thing number one, those cables are broken. We'll get back to it later. Thing number two, when the ship struck the sea mine, it actually twisted the hull slightly. So the Britannic is no longer in a uniform shape, and as such, several of the watertight doors are now blocked from closing, which leads to the same compartments that sank the Titanic flooding on the Britannic. Now, this was bad. This is really, really bad for just about everyone on the ship, because now they have to fight for survival. And you can kind of see already that the ship is leaning over a fair bit. And earlier it was kind of rocking back and forth like crazy. So everyone's getting up, and everyone's getting ready to evacuate, because that didn't sound very good. And the crew is making their rounds to try and determine whether or not the ship is sinking. And right now, there's kind of a quiet almost throughout the ship. Oh yeah, here you can hear the engines. And the crew draws up, and I'm not sure how long we have until it happens, but the crew does end up drawing up a bit of a plan. Oh yeah, and I believe about now, one of the engines jams, and the starboard propeller just stops working. So the ship is, or does that happen later? I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place, but they do order the ship to stop. Maybe I should really be on the bridge right now. That way I can see the telegraph orders and kind of talk through what's happening. It's been a while since I've thought about this ship. Then anyways, it's kind of leaning over to its side. And this can be kind of difficult to see, but if I stand like right here, you can kind of see compared to the horizon the ship is in fact listing. Oh. It does. I do think that they stopped the ship, maybe, because I can't hear the engines anymore. Hello, Dastion? Dastion. Oh, and there go the alarms. So now the orders have pretty much been given. They are going to bring people up to the boat deck. They're going to swing out the lifeboats, but they're not going to load them. Or maybe they will. Oh. Yeah, now they're making the call to basically get to the lifeboats. Now, they're not planning to evacuate the ship just yet. That should be noted. All they are planning to do, as of this moment, is they are planning to ready the lifeboats. They aren't planning on evacuating. And the idea is they are going to, and you can tell because, oh, the order has just been given to run the port engine at full ahead. They are now going to attempt to turn the ship towards this action. Okay. And they're now going to attempt to turn the ship towards that island over there, Kea, which is kind of why this is called the Kea Channel. But they're going to turn the ship in that direction and try to beach it on that island over there. Now, if the watertight doors had functioned properly, this might have and probably would have actually worked. But the watertight door is jammed, and as such, there is no such luck. The ship is kind of screwed. And not only that, but the actions they're going to take will actually hasten its sinking, because running a ship at full speed, it does significantly increase the amount of water that's coming into the ship. So now the ship is leaning to its side, it's going down, and it's leaning forward quite a lot already. We can also quickly go over a few changes that I missed when we were talking. Oh no. Well, okay, I accidentally fell off, so. Yeah, you can see, let's see, that's F deck. F deck is going into the water. G deck is fully under at this point. But yeah, heading over here, yeah, you can see just how much of a forward leaning the ship is actually starting to take. Just quickly. Yeah, so F deck actually does start to go into the water already. So that means the ship has basically already dropped like 2 stories at its lowest point. So yeah, the ship is not by any metric sinking slowly. Yeah, I mean, this is basically me nerding out over history, because the point of this live stream is to kind of preserve the story of the Britannic, and you can see it's kind of slugging along at this point, because the point is to preserve the story that I'm trying to tell here, because this is one of those ships that's kind of forgotten about a lot. Kind of. I mean, it is more famous than, like, say, probably, like, the Sultan. Actually, no, it's probably on, like, the same level as maybe the Lusitania, I guess? It's hard to tell. Like, it's not an unknown ship, but it is not nearly as well known as its older sister, the Titanic, which, let's face it, you all know the story of that one. So everyone's kind of panicking right now. People are trying to get aboard the ship to get aboard these lifeboats as quickly as possible. The crew's attempting to get them swung out, get them readied, and this one is getting filled. So I'll go ahead and hop into it, because this is actually going to end up being the first lifeboat off the ship. Now, it should be noted that the captain's orders were to ready the lifeboats, not and maybe to load them, but definitely not to lower them, and that is because of something we're going to see eventually, probably not soon. Because here's the thing. The loading and lowering lifeboats, the Titanic is kind of a bad example for how that normally goes. Titanic got incredibly lucky with the set of circumstances it was given. Britannic really did too. They took a long time to sink, and they had skilled crews operating. Well, kind of skilled. Titanic's was still new. But anyways, lowering a little rowboat like that over, yeah, you actually spelled that right, Dakjin. So, good job. It's actually incredibly unlikely for for 20 lifeboats to make it off the ship successfully, which, because there were other ships recently where, like, the ship would last longer than the lifeboats, and I remember what its name was, but there was a ship where that happened, and the only people who survived were people who didn't get on the lifeboats. So lifeboats don't have a very great track record. Oh, here we go. Oh, that one's still broken. But yeah, here you go. That's what these davits look like in action. And the crew is basically panic lowering lifeboats. Against the captain's orders. Now, I understand their frustration. Like, there are times when going against the captain's orders is the best thing to do, like the seawall, but this is not one of those. And you'll see why in a minute. So, you can see that the lifeboat is going down. You got passing C deck. You hear that? B deck, or no, C deck, D deck, F deck, kind of passing now, and then there's G deck. And then you have, I believe, the Orlop deck, and you can kind of see it happening already. The propellers are starting to come up out of the water. Not a great thing, but these lifeboats are far enough back that they actually aren't really affected by the propellers coming up out of the water, because they're basically put right beside this area. So the lifeboat hits the water, the hooks are undone, and the boat is free to float. And we'll just give a minute for the Britannic to sail away here. There were... Huh. I remember the name of the ship started with, like, a C or something. I don't remember what the name was. I think I want to say, like, Clelum or something. But yeah, the ship basically took a ridiculously long time to sink, and lifeboats wound up being a terrible idea. It sank in a storm, too. If that helps. But, so the ship is sailing away, and kind of coming out, and you can see that all these lifeboats are actually getting swung out now. Swung out and over the side of the ship, and even some of the gantry davits are getting, swung out and loaded and all that. And there is a lot of stuff happening. Like, there are people moving up the ship and all that stuff. And there are a few, interestingly enough, Titanic survivors aboard this ship. The big one is Violet Jessup, because she actually recalled, and this goes directly in... Okay, the Britannic movie is a terrible source, not just of information, but it's just a bad movie in general. The Britannic movie is rough. I would not take any information for that, because that one there were, like, spies aboard the ship, there was, like, a big old Tommy gun thing. Safe to say none of that actually happened on the real Britannic. And you'll actually start to notice that the ship sinks much differently. The lifeboats died first. Well, yeah. That also happened aboard the Atlantic. Although the Atlantic had its own very special set of circumstances, and was actually much older than either the Britannic, Titanic, or even that like Clellum ship I mentioned earlier. But yeah, the Atlantic was a very special beast in that regard. So we can see that another lifeboat. Actually, no, it hasn't left yet. Oh, here we can see one of the gantry davits in action. You can see it lowering down and hooking up that lifeboat there. The lifeboat is then pulled up, and the gantry davit is swung out. And these ones move way faster than the welling davits because they are electric rather than being manual. The batteries and stuff are all stored in here, and these are the controls here. So someone is standing there and kind of keeping this whole thing working. So yeah, the lifeboat gets pulled up, it's stopped, and then the gantry davit swings the rest of the way out. And you can see the crane arms working. Lifeboat goes up and over. Nice. Lifeboat swings out. Yeah. And stops right about here and is lowered down to be at level with this railing here. And the idea behind that is basically now they're loading these lifeboats here. So they're getting people, kind of chucking them in. Oh, hey, that lifeboat left. And then you just kind of wait here for it to be launched and all of that stuff. So, heading back over here, we'll see if it's happened yet, but it has not, so we'll kind of wait over here. Because there's a second lifeboat that I'm going to be joining as it departs, and maybe even a third. And the next lifeboat is this one, and I'm not sure if this is the one that Violet Jessup was on, but it was either this one or that one over there, or that one right there. And you'll see why these two lifeboats became very notable, because believe it or not, in the sinking only roughly 30 people died, which is kind of incredible given the circumstances. But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to why and how those 30 people died in a very, very brief moment. Hopefully. I'll stick off the side of the ship off the lifeboat for now, that way I can get views of everything that's happening and all that stuff. Oh, steam is actually being vented from the funnel there. See that the ship is leaning over quite far, and I believe that lifeboat left the instant that I walked away, so I'm going to have to basically jump over the side of the ship, because I do want to show you guys what happens to this lifeboat. There we go. So we're past B deck now. C deck. And you'll notice that we are kind of brushing up along the side of the ship. D deck. E deck. And we don't actually pass F, and I'm not sure if we're going to pass F deck. No, we're not. We're going to kind of get level with the E deck floor before we stop right here. And the hooks are released, and the lifeboat begins to make its way away from the ship. Now, there's a bit of an issue. Because the ship is moving, it's kind of creating suction, and that suction is pulling the lifeboat into the side of the ship. So this lifeboat literally cannot get away from the boat, just no matter how hard the passengers try. which isn't that big of an issue. You know, on its own, it's pretty harmless. And so the ship just kind of continues to make its way down past the ship. Oh, you can see another lifeboat getting swung out and lowered there. Well, not lowered, but like lowered down to the boat deck level. And you can see that the tilt of the ship as more of that starts to come out of the water. That's a working bilge pump, actually, so that's pretty good. That means they're actually trying to pump the water out. Oh, what's that over there? That appears to be one of the ship's 3 gigantic propellers, the things that keep the ship moving in the water. And it appears that because we cannot clear the side of the ship, the boat, this lifeboat, is moving straight for it. And this tiny wooden rowboat is about to... And these 2 rowboats, these 2 lifeboats, are the main reason why 30 people died. And this is why, when a ship is moving, you don't want to launch lifeboats. Smashed to pieces. And let's see how long it's going to take. But pieces are actually going to start floating up from the lifeboat, and I might have actually already missed them. Oh, hey, there they are. So yeah, that is all that's left of our tiny little lifeboat. Yes, action. Die time. So heading back aboard the ship. This second lifeboat here is also being panic loaded. No one really paid attention to what happened to that first boat. And so everyone's just kind of in panic mode right now. No one really is paying attention to what's going on, and that lifeboat is actually being lowered down to basically not quite the water level. And I'll actually go ahead and hop aboard it, because the idea behind that is just to have it more ready to go, I guess. Now, it should be noted that Captain Bartlett was not made aware of none of the 3 lifeboats that have launched thus far. He was told nothing of the sort. So we'll see if I can hop on top of this gantry davit here. Kind of parkour our way over there. Because this... Oh. I think I can make it. Barely. And you'll see that that lifeboat is also getting lowered. And this whole time, the men in this lifeboat are actually cursing out the guys over by the gantry davit because they want to get off. They want to get off right now because the ship is sinking and this is a bad situation you don't want to be in. So they're cursing out the guys up there because they want to get off the ship faster. And meanwhile, that lifeboat hits the water and begins making its way. Yeah, that lifeboat, let's see, hits the water about there, is released, and starts floating downstream. And a bunch of people kind of see this happen. Now this lifeboat's going to do a sick flip, just like, there, good, there. Kind of gets, and you can see it getting like sucked into the back, kind of bumps against it, and is pulled the rest of the way. And that's, so people can't really get over the side. And a bunch of people kind of start watching this lifeboat, goes, hey, they get to go off the ship. Why can't we do that? Well, they're about to see why you can't do that, and let's see. There it is. So these people so all at once, the people inside that lifeboat start just jumping for it. And the people in this lifeboat get to watch and see. This is why you don't launch the lifeboats until the captain says when to go. That. And meanwhile, and so these guys kind of shut up. Those guys start freaking out probably because they don't want to be in the water anymore. Well, finally, thankfully, someone tells the captain what has been happening at the back of his ship, and the captain actually brings the engines to a stop. So you can see the propeller slowing down there, which is very lucky for these guys because they got very close to being the third lifeboat lost to the propellers, and instead, the propellers stopped right before they got there, and they were able to pass by peacefully. Now, jumping back aboard the ship, the captain finally kind of concedes. He kind of realizes, and we'll actually ride that lifeboat off because it provides a pretty sick view. He concedes that this isn't going to, that this isn't going to work, and so he gives the order to abandon ship, and also stops the ship, dead in its tracks. So, it's finally happening, ladies and gentlemen. People are getting off the ship just like they wanted to, without being sucked into the giant death machine on the back of the ship. And that is actually making a lot of people really happy, because now they aren't, no longer on the sinking ship. But he does keep a skeleton crew aboard, because his plan is, once this all stops, once everyone's off, he's going to try again. Now, it should also be noted that now that the ship kind of slows down about now, and that is because the ship's kind of reached a point that if another factor hadn't been present, the ship would have probably stopped sinking about now. But I'll point that out But you know what? I'll actually hop off and... yeah, I'll give it a minute. So right now, it's an evacuation time. Everyone's finally off the ship. Ship is pointing down pretty far into the sea. And lifeboats are just dropping off the side of the ship, left and right. They're just leaving as fast as they can, which is completely understandable. I wouldn't want to be on a sinking ship. I don't want to be on a sinking ship either. So these people are, just doing what it takes to survive, really. And the gantry davits are doing theirs jobs. And this davit has a pretty interesting thing. It slides back. Hello, Livington. It slides back and then promptly breaks. I don't know exactly how or why it broke. It just does, and it stops working and is out of commission for the rest of the sinking. So all of the lifeboats here are stuck. They cannot be used. So let's go ahead and check up. Interesting sounds coming from the ship. But I am going to show you a pretty neat view that most people overlook in this game. Well, okay, not really. It is in a few videos. Oh yeah, and you'll notice that this got pulled back up. I'm not sure if they're going to do the thing. Those two lifeboats were the only two lifeboats that were on the Welling davits that evacuate from this side. Oh, that's the view I wanted to show you. That's boiler room 6. It's filling with water. So anyways, now I'm going to hop into this lifeboat. This davit's going to stop. People are going to grab it and make sure that the boat ends up nice and hooked up. Now it should be noted. Nice. It should also be very noted that the Britannic, oh god, what was I going to say? Never mind. Oh yeah, the same guys who made this game, Britannic, Patroness of the Mediterranean, are working on another game for the Lusitania, and there's also a team, and this game used to be affiliated with the other game that I'm about to talk about, but basically the entire crew for that one left. The entire crew for this game left. So the game I'm talking about is Titanic: Honor and Glory, which is going to recreate the ship 100% inside and out. So you'll be able to explore the entire ship in both its interior and exterior. But yeah, no. The guys who are making this are making a game called Lusitania. Who made this are working on a game called Lusitania in the Greyhound's Wake, which is hopefully going to be a really good and interesting experience that teaches a lot about the Lusitania. Oh, so now we are heading up, You kind of get to see just how high above the deck we get to go. And yeah, we're like right up to the top now, and you can see just over the entire boat deck, basically. So then you can hear the gantry start going, and we start to move out over the side. And you can actually see, oh, you see that box right there that's behind the grand staircase dome? That's actually the elevator gears. That's the machines that keep the elevators, working. Neat little trivia fact, so, to tell your friends. And you'll also notice that because the elevator gear was on the boat deck on the previous two ships, it's not actually on the boat. It's not actually there on the Olympic and the Titanic. So that little box didn't exist for much of the Olympic class. Now you can see we're going out over the side of the ship, providing a real interesting view. And I'm going to point something out when we get to the bottom. Now, it should be noted, the Olympic class is built for passenger service between England and America, which largely goes across the North Atlantic. And as you may know, the North Atlantic is incredibly cold. It gets very cold, but not both in the water and the air. So the ships were built to be very well insulated, very cut off from outside, which works really well in the North Atlantic. It keeps everything warm. But in the Mediterranean, a much more tropic area, it kind of backfires because the inside of the ship gets really stuffy. But that's okay. The ship will probably never be down there. Well, it was, and as such, many of the windows on D-deck were opened to allow better ventilation. And now, with the ship sinking and the ocean getting higher and higher and higher, water is reaching those open portholes and actually starting to make its way inside the ship. However, which just basically accelerates the sinking. However, there is a bit of an interesting thing. The ship, from the outside, because a lot of these the open portholes haven't been reached yet, the ship is probably fine. And it's actually slowed down and basically stopped sinking for the moment. So, the crew is going to attempt to get the ship underway again. And the reason for that is they believe that with a little bit more steam, they can actually push the ship to maybe not to Kea, but to like a sandbar nearby, and still salvage the ship. So the crew rings the engines on. So the skeleton crew, including captain and officers, ring the ship to full ahead once again. Maybe not full ahead, but like maybe half ahead or something. And the ship starts moving once more. And really quickly, and you'll see that those lifeboats are actually those davits are actually getting swung in and hooked up to those collapsible boats. So they're already also starting to do that. They're having those at the ready in case the crew does need to leave. We'll see if it's happened yet. Oh yeah, and there's one of those motorboats out on the water, pulling away from the ship. So it hasn't happened yet. They haven't launched the boats yet. They haven't started the ship up again, I meant to say. So the ship is just slowly gliding along. And we'll see. Oh, hey, and I believe that's actually not the second motorboat. Did that one already make it off? Let's kind of pull back here so I can... Nope, it's still there. Well, let's see. As this one... So yeah, it's actually a very pretty sight seeing the ship kind of sinking like this. Hello, Green Rescue Squad. Okay, so not only is the, so the video is actually delayed for the live stream, so I'm probably going to respond to your guys' comments a little bit late, because And I also get, like, sucked into doing all this and stuff, so. Yeah. You can see depth markers for the ship. And we can see this little motorboat actually moving and making its way away from the ship. I'm kind of standing on top of the motor here. You can see the ship nice and pretty there. This is roughly about the time that painting by Ken Marshall, this is roughly about the same time that was depicting. You can see with the propellers being most of the way out of the water and all the life fits kind of clustered up here. Now, the only difference is that the ship's actually moving in that one, so we'll give it a moment. And we can see the ship starting to groan and creak with just the stress of sinking, because sinking kind of puts the ship into sinking kind of puts the ship into positions that it's not really built to, and makes this ship undergo stresses it's not really meant to withstand. That kind of principle is why the Titanic broke apart while it was sinking. Now, the Britannic here doesn't do that, but we do get to see some interesting, but we do get to see the ship gracefully, well, not really gracefully, more just kind of, we get to see the ship start moving again, so. Now this lifeboat's actually starting to move, it's starting its engines and starting to move away from the ship. Pretty quickly. Oh no, this game is like $15 on Steam. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna kind of stick around the ship because I'm gonna be basically getting back on board soon anyway. What I do want to capture is the site of the... Oh, there it is. So there it goes. Now the engines are starting up again. Or I guess just the one engine. You can see the ship almost instantly just start moving a little bit faster. And yeah, there goes the central propeller. Now you'll notice that the starboard propeller does not start, and that's because, again, it's jammed. So... So now the ship is leaning pretty far over. So back on the ship. Oh, I didn't show you guys what the grand staircase looked like on the inside of the hospital ship. Nah, whatever. Yeah, I'll go over that afterwards, because that's pretty interesting, too. So you'll notice that the bow is actually, if we go onto the well deck... Hello, Ty. And so back on the ship, you can actually see water is actually starting to come up onto the well deck. Barely, and it probably wouldn't actually be coming onto the well deck until it hit those areas there. Don't worry, you'll probably get to see another one. Okay, to answer your question, Livington, kind of both. The propellers were jammed. Actually, no, you might just be right. I might also be dumb. Actually, no, I think they jammed roughly now in the sinking, because they were jammed at one point. And that led to Britannic overshooting Kia. I could have sworn that those got jammed. I might just be, tripping, or that might just be something that was just completely wrong, and I heard it and just started repeating it like an idiot, but... yeah, I'm pretty sure they were jammed at one point. I'm not entirely sure, though. But you can see if we stand right here, we can actually hear the waves, and that is not a good feeling. Again, okay, again, Livington, I'm not entirely sure if that's correct. Because what you said actually makes a lot of sense, but, yeah. I'm pretty sure it did get jammed at some point, because I know that they also tried to use the helm, and the helm was jammed, so I might also just be thinking of that. So another change that I actually missed is, these promenades got turned into hospitals, too. So that's a thing. It's not as important anymore, because, you know, we've got more interesting things going on. And I am actually going to hop off on the last lifeboat, which I believe is this guy up here. But yeah, you'll see how they swung some of the davits in order to load these lifeboats here. Yeah, Ty, me neither. I didn't know that until well, okay, I knew that the 21st was the anniversary. I just didn't realize that today was the 21st until, like, right before I started the stream. So, yeah. There goes the lifeboats. I really wish you could crouch in this game. That would make everything a lot easier. So yeah, you can hear the engines here. Like over here, you can hear them going. Oh, this collapsible actually made it off the ship. That's pretty neat. But yeah, you can tell that these lifeboats are... Britannic SOS, that one was pretty good. It's not as good as Titanic SOS, but the Titanic SOS team is working on another game. I know exactly nothing about the game. No one really does, but they are making it. Yeah, so that's a thing. But I can send you the link, because it's dead, but unless it bugged out, it might have actually bugged out, so. But, assuming it didn't, it would still be working. It's discontinued, so. It's discontinued, so, it might still work. Eventually it'll stop working, because Roblox keeps updating its engine, so. Yeah. Yeah, no, they stopped updating that one. Basically when they moved groups. And you can see here that the well deck is filling with water. That's nice. So let's see, we've got boiler room 6 filling with water. Boiler room 5 is filling up. Let's take a look. Is boiler room 4 done yet? Although I'm not entirely sure. Boiler room 4 is pretty done. 3 is not doing too hot. Well, okay, 3 is filled with water, so. Two appears to be okay. And I'm assuming 1 is as well. Yeah. So neither of these boats are being swung out just yet. That's actually pretty cool. Is Rec Room like VR or anything like that? I'll look it up. Hey, Ice Monster, welcome back. Yeah, the well deck is basically halfway submerged now. And this is rough, like if you click teleport to halfway point, this is roughly where it'll drop you. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate or not. I don't think that's the actual halfway point, but I think we're a little bit past that, but we might not be, because this ship takes a long time to sink. Nice. I'm excited for that. Ice Monster made some really good Olympic-class ships for Stormworks, if you guys have that. It is more expensive than this game by a fair bit. $25 for that one, as opposed to the 15 for this one. But yeah, it's a very good game. Tiny Ship Sandbox, yes, I'm very familiar with that one. That one's pretty famous among Roblox, I do think. You can hear just the creaking. It's not... The ship is not doing... It's doing the best right now. You can see that water's actually starting to come up and over that bulwark. So yeah, things are not doing too great. And the ship actually, yeah, look, the ship is actually overshot Kea. If we go here and look, line this up so we're looking straight, the ship has basically done a really... The ship has done a massive U-turn. So here's when things start moving quicker again, because once again, moving a sinking ship, moving it in the water, causes more water to come into the ship, which is not what you want. However, moves like this do sometimes pay off. Sometimes. It's very, very rare that this actually works out. And you can see the ship is trucking along pretty decently. Sea deck is actually starting to touch the water there with the forecastle. Yeah, it's not great. The ship is very clearly sinking. And we can see some light that the collapsible boats are actually starting to come out over the side. And you can see it's moving roughly along. But yeah, not the kind of situation you would want. I'm actually going to stay off the ship for now, because this is when things start heating up for the Britannic. And you can see that the bow is just diving deeper and deeper into the water. Those sea deck portholes that were above the water line when I jumped off are now all completely underwater. Are now just about completely underwater. On both sides, I do believe, the nameplate has gone... Actually, no, on this side, the Britannic, the nameplate is still above water, but it's quickly going down. This ship is not doing good. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, that nameplate is making its way towards the water. Let's see, I believe the next peak wave is gonna hit the nameplate, maybe? No, not quite. But yeah, you can see that the ship is just slowly making its way deeper and deeper. Are you going to play a Britannic Roblox game? Maybe. That depends on how long the stream is running. I know it's going to be over an hour, but if it's over an hour and a half, I'll cut it. We'll still do all the credits and stuff, because the credit soundtrack is just it's an absolute banger for this game, by the way. And, so down it goes. You can see water coming up over the railing now. So sea deck is basically completely underwater at this point. Like, this is the view you're getting. You're basically standing on one of those like platform yachts you see in like Maine and Vermont. And yep, the nameplate is going under very quickly. It's over an hour. Yeah, if it gets over an hour and a half, like, okay, so yeah, we're just gonna do this like real-time thing, because I know that the video is gonna get over an hour, and we'll also check out the hospital ship interiors, because the inside is actually, it's kind of incredible, the transformation you see. So about now, the crew kind of starts to realize that they're not gonna beach on like a shoal or anything like that is going to save the ship. So the crew just about now decides that it's not worth it. There's no way the ship can be saved, and they're going to call for everyone to abandon ship about now. Like, very soon. You can see that last lifeboat is making its way down the side of the ship. Yeah, my personal theory is that if either the Titanic or Britannic made it past these voyages and became like passenger ships and like full time, they probably would have been even more successful than the Olympic was. But sadly, this is the timeline got stuck in, where both of these ships sank before they reached maturity, and it is sad. Oh, there it is. They are now giving the call that it is time to completely abandon ship. 2 long blasts of the whistle. See. There it is. Oh. And the ship is making noises that are kind of spooky. So the ship is starting to drop incredibly quickly now. And it is really bad. Like, it's done. Like, there's nothing... You can't save the ship anymore. Although that was really... The thing was damned from the minute it struck the sea mine, so... And you can see the ship kind of start to stop. And that is because if we go out, the propellers are actually almost... Are, one, stopping because everyone's abandoning the engine room. And are, B, pretty much completely out of the water. The propellers are... done. Like, the ship isn't moving anymore. And you can see that last lifeboat is rowing away from the ship about now, and the thing is actually starting to drop incredibly quickly. So the officers actually, instead of like making a break for like a lifeboat or something, they actually just kind of walk. Like, they go from their position roughly in here and just go, "It's been an honor," and walk down into the docking bridge and out onto the bridge wing, and get to see this lovely view as the ship sinks around them. So this is the view that you would get if you were one of the Britannic's officers. And especially if you knew the Titanic sinking, this is an incredibly ominous view because you are right in front of the ship's forward first funnel, which, as you probably know, collapsed on the Titanic and fell onto everyone who was fell into a bunch of people in the water. And you'll actually notice the ship is listing over very far right now. Like, it is listing basically on its side. Well, okay, not basically on its side. It's still easier to be on the floor than it is on the wall. But that is getting very close to that. To wanting to stand on, like, the wall instead. So as the ship sinks, and we're just going to kind of keep walking out here until we get a beautiful view of the entire vessel. There we go. That is kind of incredible, actually. So I'll just leave it here, and this is the view we're going to get for the rest of the sinking. And you can see that the first funnel is dropping incredibly quickly. The stern is starting to rise up out of the water. And the third funnel is rapidly approaching the ocean as well. And give it a brief moment here. Cables snap, and the third funnel ends up being the first one to collapse into the sea. Followed very shortly by the second, as it goes right there. Yep, there it goes. Falling into the sea. And the first funnel actually did fall too, like, maybe between those two. It's hard to tell because it was basically underwater at that point. And the fourth funnel stands strong as the last funnel connected to the ship. As the thing as the ship very quickly begins to rise up and out of the water. You can see that lifeboat still rowing away, getting an incredible view of the sinking here. And the stern just keeps going up out of the water. And as the fourth funnel touches the water, keels over. As the fourth funnel touches the water, very slowly here, gets introduced in the water, and the water, floods around it and begins crushing the base in. The fourth funnel collapses. And there it goes. Now, it should also be noted that Britannic, while not getting into a shallow area that was big enough for it to be kept above water, the Britannic did get into an area that was shallow enough that the ship only hit the bottom. That all that happened was the ship slammed into the seafloor before going completely vertical, because the ship was much longer than the sea was deep, and the ship is at this moment going vertical. So you'll see the ship is going to stop, kind of push itself forward, and then free fall into the ocean. And it's doing that now. And yep, there it goes. Give you guys just a moment to appreciate the kind of horror of what's going on, because this is every sailor's worst nightmare. Actually, that might have been the ship just hitting the bottom just now, so that may have taken a little bit longer than I anticipated. But either way, you can see the ship is rolling onto its side and plunging into the sea. And just like that, the Britannic is gone, taking with her roughly 30 lives, an incredibly low number. The ship became the largest ship, although not the deadliest, wrecked in the First World War. And now, for a really good song. Oh wow, you have not watched live streams in quite some time, Ty. So yeah, that is the sinking of the Britannic. It's not a, it's an interesting affair. It's not, it doesn't reach the same levels of brutality as the Arctic, or the same, numbers as you get for the the Titanic or the Wilhelm Gustave or anyone like that. But it is an interesting ship nonetheless, because kind of like the Eastland, a lot of what happened in this sinking was affected by how the Titanic sank, and it's still an important ship. It's just maybe not as important as like the other one. As I promised, I was going to show off what the Grand Staircase looked like on the Titanic. So I'll go ahead and show that off real quick. And as you'll notice, probably instantly, it's nowhere near as luxurious as what you guys saw earlier. It's a lot drier. All of the fancy fittings and all of the stuff, all of the reasons that you go onto the ship, the luxury and the glory of it all, that's all been kind of stripped away. And that was because the owners of the Britannic did not want to risk losing very, very, very expensive items because they got, like, damaged. Let's say some soldier, accidentally bled on them or something like that. The White Star Line wasn't taking any chances, so they took the interiors of the Britannic, stripped them away, and hauled them into a warehouse, and they did the same thing for the Olympic. Now, because of this, an interesting side effect is that many of the artifacts that would have gone into the Britannic's interiors, should the ship have become a passenger ship, still exist, despite the ship laying at the bottom of the Kea Channel, and that is because after the Britannic sank and after all was said and done, well, they just sold everything, because there was no point in keeping this kind of stuff around. It was fairly outdated by the time it would have been used in 1918, 1919, and the ship was, and they didn't have the money to build. Actually, that might be the Eastland there. And there's the Lusitania. That might actually be the... Yeah, that's the Empress of Ireland. That's neat. I don't know what that ship is. I wish I could zoom in. So yeah, as you can see, all of the fancy interiors and fancy fittings have all been pulled away, and I think this is the area where you can best see that. And one of the things that was pulled away, that was pulled out, was the Britannic's pipe organ. And the pipe organ would have gone right there, as you saw on the hospital ship. And because the pipe organ was pulled out of the ship, hello Livington, it survived the sinking and was later sold and has been historically preserved. I don't know where it is right now, but it does still exist and work in the world. So that's pretty interesting. And another area that changed a lot is the swimming bath, as mentioned earlier. So we'll go ahead and quickly take a short look at that. Interestingly, the tile is still here, the floor tiling, but you can see exactly where the double hull ends. And all of that lovely marble paneling and all of that stuff has all been stripped away, leaving a very barren room. And this room actually more so resembles the Titanic's pool.
You're gonna have to wrap that up. I'm about to show off here.
Okay. And yeah, so that's about it. Yeah, they've been extensively repairing it. So anyways, I do need to wrap this all up. Thank you all so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one, whatever that may be. Bye-bye!